The keycard slid into the mansion's security system with a familiar beep, followed by the heavy click of the custom-designed lock disengaging. James Barrett pushed open the hand-carved mahogany door, his mind still churning through the metrics from his company's latest acquisition, numbers that should have been presented at the Tokyo conference that had been abruptly cancelled when their Japanese partners pulled out. 3 days of carefully planned negotiations, strategy sessions, and networking opportunities vanished with a single apologetic email. James stepped into the marble foyer, the sound of his Italian leather Oxfords echoing against the 20-foot ceilings. He dropped his briefcase, still packed with presentation materials no one would see, onto the console table with a heavier thud than necessary. The house wasn't supposed to be this quiet. His staff, the housekeeper, the groundskeeper, the personal chef, operated on a precise schedule he'd established years ago, a well-oiled domestic machine that ran whether he was present or not. "Rosa?" he called out, checking his watch. 3:42 p.m. His housekeeper should be here, probably organizing the pantry or pressing his shirts for the coming week. "I'm back early. The Tokyo conference was..." The words died in his throat as Rosa appeared from the kitchen corridor, her finger pressed firmly against her lips, her eyes wide with an urgency he'd never seen in his typically composed housekeeper. "SHHHH," she whispered, the sound slicing through the cavernous foyer. "Please, sir." "Quiet." James stared at her, momentarily frozen by the sheer unexpectedness of it. In the 5 years Rosa Mendez had managed his household, she had never once told him what to do. Their relationship operated on clear boundaries. He gave orders, she executed them flawlessly. She anticipated his needs, maintained his home in immaculate condition, and remained pleasantly invisible unless summoned. That was their unspoken agreement, compensated by the generous salary and benefits package his assistant had negotiated on his behalf. And yet here she stood, her small frame somehow blocking his path into his own home, one finger still raised to her lips in a universal gesture that even a tech CEO worth $2.4 billion apparently couldn't ignore. "Excuse me?" James said, his voice automatically lowering despite his confusion. Something about Rosa's expression, the tension around her eyes, the slight tremble in her outstretched hand, stopped him from responding with the immediate irritation that typically followed any disruption to his expectations. Rosa glanced nervously over her shoulder toward the east wing of the house, then stepped closer to James, close enough that he could smell the faint lemon scent of the cleaning products she used on his furniture. "Mr. Barrett," she whispered, her accent thickening with what he now recognized as anxiety. "I'm very sorry, but please, you must be quiet. It's important." James felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. In his world, unexpected urgency usually meant market crashes, security breaches, or PR disasters, not housekeepers with fingers pressed to their lips. His mind rapidly cycled through possibilities: home invasion, gas leak, some catastrophic plumbing issues she was trying to manage before he discovered it. "What's going on?" he asked, his whisper sharper than intended. "Is something wrong with the house?" Rosa hesitated, her hands twisting the edge of the crisp white apron she always wore despite his previous assurances that such formality wasn't necessary. Modern household staff didn't need uniforms. His HR director had been very clear about that when setting up the employment contracts. "Not the house, sir," Rosa finally said, her eyes meeting his directly for perhaps the first time in their professional relationship. "It's complicated. If you could just come with me, quietly. Please." The please hung in the air between them, a request rather than the deference he was accustomed to. James found himself nodding, slipping off his shoes without being asked, something he never did, and following Rosa's silent steps across the imported marble floor. Instead of leading him toward his home office or the master suite as he expected, Rosa turned toward the service corridor, the narrow hallway that connected the kitchen to the staff quarters at the far end of the east wing. It was a part of his own home James rarely entered, having no reason to venture into the functional spaces where the mechanisms of his comfortable life operated unseen. The corridor was immaculate but utilitarian, no artwork on the walls, no custom lighting fixtures, none of the carefully curated luxury that characterized the rest of the house. They passed the laundry room with its commercial-grade equipment, a small staff bathroom, and the climate-controlled pantry before reaching a simple door at the end of the hall. Rosa paused, her hand on the doorknob, and turned to James with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "Sir," she whispered, "I need to explain something before we go in." James felt his patience thinning. He'd followed his housekeeper through the back corridors of his own home, in his socked feet, without explanation. Whatever emergency required this level of discretion, he wanted to address it immediately. "Just show me what the problem is, Rosa," he said, still keeping his voice low. "Whatever it is, we can fix it." Rosa's eyes flickered with something, doubt, perhaps, or resignation. "It's not that simple, Mr. Barrett. It's about your daughter." The world seemed to tilt beneath James's feet. "Lily? What about Lily? She's with her mother in Connecticut. She's not supposed to be here until summer vacation. She arrived about 2 hours ago," Rosa said, her voice barely audible. "In a taxi. Alone." James stared at the closed door, suddenly understanding that his 12-year-old daughter was behind it. His daughter, who should be 3 states away with her mother and stepfather in their perfectly normal suburban home with the good school district and the golden retriever Lily had begged for after the divorce. "Why didn't you call me immediately?" he demanded, forgetting to whisper. Rosa's expression hardened slightly. "She begged me not to. She was very upset, Mr. Barrett. I thought it best to let her calm down first." Before James could respond, the door behind Rosa opened a crack, revealing a sliver of a room he had never seen despite owning it. A small voice emerged from the shadows. "Rosa? Who are you talking to?" The door opened wider, and there stood Lily, his daughter, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her long dark hair, so like her mother's, tangled as if she'd been running her hands through it repeatedly. She wore jeans and a wrinkled hoodie from a school science competition he'd missed last year due to an investor meeting. "Dad?" Lily's voice cracked with surprise, her eyes widening. "You're not supposed to be home." James felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief at seeing his daughter safe, confusion about her unexpected appearance, and an irrational twinge of hurt that she sounded disappointed to see him. "Lily, what are you doing here? Does your mother know where you are?" The questions came out more sharply than he intended, and he watched his daughter physically recoil, stepping back into the room, into Rosa's room, he now realized, taking in the modest space behind her. Rosa's quarters were small but surprisingly personal. A patchwork quilt covered a neatly made single bed. Family photos lined a small dresser. Books in both Spanish and English filled a simple bookshelf. And there, on a small table by the window, sat 2 mugs of what appeared to be hot chocolate, one half empty. The domesticity of the scene struck James with unexpected force. While he'd been mentally reworking projection models on his flight home, his housekeeper had been serving hot chocolate to his runaway daughter in a room he never bothered to enter. "Mr. Barrett," Rosa said softly but firmly, "perhaps we could all sit down and talk calmly? Lily has had a difficult day." James looked from Rosa to his daughter, noting how Lily seemed to shrink behind the housekeeper, using the smaller woman as a shield between herself and her father. The realization stung more than he cared to admit. "Of course," he said, modulating his tone to match Rosa's calm demeanor. "But Lily, I need to call your mother right away. She must be worried sick." Lily's face crumpled. "No! Please don't call her. Not yet." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. "She doesn't know I'm gone. She and Richard are at some stupid couples retreat this weekend. The babysitter thinks I'm at Jade's house, and Jade's mom thinks I'm at home." James stared at his daughter, momentarily speechless. The level of deception required for a 12-year-old to orchestrate such a plan, to travel alone from Connecticut to California without anyone knowing, was both alarming and, he had to admit, impressive in its execution. "You came all this way by yourself? Across the entire country?" The logistics seemed impossible. "How did you even pay for the ticket?" Lily looked down at her sneakers. "I used the emergency credit card you gave me last Christmas. The one you said was only for real emergencies." Her voice dropped to a whisper. This felt like an emergency to me. James ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the situation. His daughter had fled across the country, using resources he'd provided, and had turned to his housekeeper rather than calling him directly. Each realization felt like another indictment of his parenting, or lack thereof. Lily, he said, crouching down to her eye level, something he couldn't remember doing since she was much younger. What happened? What kind of emergency made you come all this way alone? Lily's eyes darted to Rosa, who gave her an encouraging nod. The silent communication between them spoke volumes about a relationship James hadn't known existed. I can't live there anymore, Lily said finally, her voice small but determined. Richard hates me. Mom never listens. Nobody sees me. I just wanted to come home. Home. The word echoed in the small room. This mansion, with its museum-quality art and rooms designed for entertaining business associates, was legally Lily's primary residence. But as James looked around Rosa's modest quarters, where his daughter had instinctively sought refuge, he wondered if any part of this house had ever truly felt like home to Lily since the divorce. Why didn't you call me? He asked, the question emerging more vulnerable than he'd intended. Lily looked at him directly for the first time, her eyes, so like his own, clear despite the tears. You're always busy, Dad. Always. I didn't think you'd answer. The truth of her words hit him with physical force. How many of Lily's calls had he let go to voicemail during meetings? How many texts had he responded to hours later with generic apologies about his schedule? Before he could respond, Rosa stepped forward, her quiet authority filling the small space. Mr. Barrett, she said gently, Lily needs rest and care right now. The reasons can wait a little longer. She is safe here with us. Us. Not you. The distinction wasn't lost on James. For the first time, he truly looked at Rosa, not as his housekeeper, but as the woman his daughter had trusted enough to flee to in her moment of crisis. The woman who had received his child without judgment, offered comfort without questions, and now stood between them not as an employee but as Lily's protector. You're right, he said finally, surprising both Rosa and himself with his acquiescence. Lily, are you hungry? Can I get you anything? Lily shook her head, still wary. Rosa made me a sandwich earlier. And hot chocolate. Of course she had. While he had been cursing cancelled conferences and missed opportunities, Rosa had been caring for his child's most basic needs he should have anticipated but couldn't even identify. Perhaps, Rosa suggested cautiously, Lily could rest here a while longer? When she's ready, we could all talk in the kitchen. Sometimes difficult conversations are easier around food. James nodded, suddenly aware of how completely he had ceded control of the situation to his housekeeper, and how right it felt to do so. In this moment, Rosa understood his daughter better than he did, knew what she needed when he could only guess. That sounds like a good plan, he agreed, standing up slowly. To Lily, he added, I won't call your mother yet, but we will need to let her know you're safe. Soon. Lily nodded reluctantly, some of the tension leaving her small shoulders. Okay. But can I stay here? With you? I don't want to go back. The plaintive question hung in the air between them. James looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the occasional weekend visitor he'd grown accustomed to, but a child in pain, a child who had crossed a continent to escape something she couldn't bear. We'll figure it out, he promised, meaning it. Together. As he turned to leave, giving Lily the space Rosa had suggested she needed, James paused at the door of the small room that had become an unexpected sanctuary in his own home. Thank you, he said quietly to Rosa. For being here for her. Rosa's smile was sad but knowing. Children need to be heard, Mr. Barrett. Sometimes that's all. Just to be heard. As James walked back through the service corridor toward the main house, he felt like a visitor in his own life, a man who had built an empire while missing the small, crucial moments that made a family. The quiet command that had started it all. Please, sir. Quiet. Echoed in his mind, No longer an affront to his authority, but the beginning of an awakening he hadn't known he needed. The video went viral 3 weeks after that fateful afternoon, not because anyone had planned it, but because some moments of genuine human connection transcend the ordinary and demand to be shared. It began with a security camera clip from Barrett Technologies' downtown headquarters. The billionaire CEO rushing out of a board meeting, phone clutched to his ear, face drained of color. The timestamp showed 10:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Someone in IT leaked it to social media with the caption, "When your boss gets a call that changes everything." From there, internet sleuths pieced together the rest. A school counselor in Connecticut confirmed that a wellness check had been requested for Richard Atwood, stepfather to James Barrett's daughter. Court documents revealed an emergency custody hearing. Then came photos of James and Lily at the airport, his arm protectively around her shoulders as they navigated through paparazzi. #BarrettDadMove started trending, followed by #WhereAreYouWatching as people worldwide shared the unfolding story. Watching from Sydney, sometimes money isn't the most important thing. Soul here. My father was like Richard. I wish someone had rescued me. Chicago single dad crying into my coffee. Do better for your kids, guys. The speculation reached fever pitch when James Barrett, notoriously private about his personal life, posted a single photo to his rarely used social media account, a simple dinner table set for 3, with the caption, "Home." #What really matters. The third place setting belonged to Rosa. 2 days after Lily's arrival, James cancelled all his meetings for the week, something his executive assistant couldn't recall him ever doing, not even when he'd had pneumonia last winter. "Are you ill, sir?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "No, Beth. I'm actually feeling clearer than I have in years," James replied. "Family emergency. Forward anything truly urgent to my personal email, but it better be apocalyptic." The kitchen had become their neutral territory. Not James's formal dining room with its intimidating 20-foot table, but the warm, functional kitchen where Rosa had always worked her quiet magic. The breakfast nook with its bay window overlooking the garden hosted their tentative family meetings. That morning, James entered to find Rosa teaching Lily how to make chilaquiles, his daughter's laughter floating through the room as she attempted to flip tortilla pieces in the pan. "Dad!" Lily spotted him hovering in the doorway. "Rosa's showing me how to make breakfast like her abuela taught her. It smells amazing," James said, accepting the mug of coffee Rosa handed him. Their fingers brushed momentarily, and he felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. In 5 years, he realized, he never actually touched his housekeeper, not even a handshake. "Mr. Barrett, I've prepared the guest room next to yours for Lily," Rosa said, returning to the stove. "I thought she might be more comfortable there than in her old room." James nodded gratefully. Lily's room had been decorated by an interior designer when she was 7, all princess themes and pink walls she'd outgrown years ago. He'd never updated it, another oversight in a long list of parental failures. "Thank you," he said, watching as his daughter competently chopped cilantro under Rosa's guidance. When had Lily learned knife skills? Was that something her mother had taught her, or had she picked it up during her weekends here with Rosa? "We need to talk about what happens next," James said carefully as they sat down to eat. "Your mother called my lawyer yesterday. She's frantic, Lily." Lily's fork paused midway to her mouth. "You told her I'm here?" "I had to, sweetheart. It's the law. She's your legal guardian." "I'm not going back," Lily said, putting down her fork. "I can't. Can you tell me why?" James asked, forcing himself to remain calm while his insides churned with anxiety. "What happened with Richard?" Lily looked down at her plate, then at Rosa, who gave her an encouraging nod. He doesn't hit me or anything," Lily began, the clarification making James's blood run cold. "But he says things. All the time. About how I'm in the way. How he never wanted someone else's kid. How Mom would be happier if I lived with you full time." "He says these things to you?" James clarified, struggling to keep his voice level. "Sometimes to me. Sometimes I just overhear him fighting with Mom about me. Lily's voice grew smaller. Last week, I heard him say that boarding school would solve the Lily problem once and for all. And Mom didn't even disagree. James reached across the table, offering his hand palm up. After a moment's hesitation, Lily placed her smaller hand in his. I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone, he said. But running away isn't the solution. We need to handle this properly, legally. That's what Rosa said too, Lily admitted. She said we have to do things the right way, even when it's hard. James glanced at Rosa with newfound appreciation. While he'd been ready to call in lawyers and security teams, she had been counseling his daughter on integrity and proper channels. Your mother and Richard are flying in tomorrow, James said gently. My lawyer has arranged a mediation session. We're going to talk about changing the custody arrangement. Lily's eyes widened with fear. I don't want to see Richard. You won't have to, James assured her. He'll meet with the mediators separately. And I've arranged for a child advocate to be present, someone whose only job is to look out for your best interests. What's going to happen to me? Lily asked, the question breaking James's heart with its vulnerability. That depends on what you want, he answered truthfully. Would you like to live here with me? Full-time or most of the time? Lily glanced between him and Rosa, uncertainty in her eyes. Would things be different? Or would you still be at work all the time? The question struck him like a physical blow. Of course she would worry about that. Her few weeks with him each year had been filled with nannies, camps, and activities while he maintained his punishing work schedule. Things would be very different, James promised. I would change my hours. Be home for dinner. Attend your school events. Whatever it takes. Lily looked skeptical. You always say your company needs you. The company has 5,000 employees. You have one dad. James squeezed her hand. I've been getting that backward for too long. Rosa quietly began clearing plates, giving them privacy, but James stopped her with a gentle touch on her arm. Rosa, please stay. You're part of this conversation too. Rosa hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with this deviation from her usual role. Sir, this is a family matter. You are the reason my daughter felt safe enough to come home, James said simply. That makes you family, as far as I'm concerned. A flush spread across Rosa's cheeks as she slowly sat back down. Lily immediately reached for her hand, creating a circle of connection among the three of them. If I live here, Lily said carefully, would Rosa still be here too? Of course, James answered. Unless Rosa has other plans? Rosa shook her head. My place is here, she said quietly. As long as I'm needed. The significance of that statement hung in the air between them. For 5 years, Rosa had been needed for her cooking, her cleaning, her impeccable household management. Now, she was needed for something far more important, her heart, her wisdom, her steady presence in Lily's life. Then it's settled, James said. Tomorrow we begin the process. And Lily, no matter what happens in that meeting, I want you to know that you will always have a home here. With us. Us. The word felt right in a way he hadn't expected. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed in her newly prepared room, James found Rosa in the kitchen, preparing lunches for the next day. You don't have to do that so late, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Rosa looked up, surprised to see him. It's my job, Mr. Barrett. James, he corrected gently. After everything that's happened, I think you can call me James. Rosa's hands stilled on the sandwich she was wrapping. That wouldn't be appropriate. Appropriate according to whom? James challenged. The household management rules I established when I barely knew you. When I saw you as staff rather than as a person who's been more of a parent to my daughter than I have. Rosa met his gaze directly. You're being too hard on yourself. You're her father. Biologically, yes. But parenting is about being present, isn't it? Something I'm only beginning to understand. James stepped fully into the kitchen. How long have you been covering for me, Rosa? Making Lily feel welcome during her visits? Listening to her when I was too busy? Rosa carefully set down the knife she'd been using. Children need consistency, Mr. Barrett. Lily is a wonderful girl who deserves to feel secure, even when her life is divided between two homes. And you provided that security. It wasn't a question. Why? It certainly wasn't in your job description. For the first time, Rosa seemed at a loss for words. Finally, she said, because someone needed to. Because she reminds me of myself at that age, caught between worlds, belonging nowhere. The simple honesty of her answer struck James deeply. In 5 years, he never asked Rosa about her life before she came to work for him. He'd read her resume, checked her references, verified her work permit, and then promptly forgotten that she had a history, a story, a life outside of managing his. Tell me about your family, Rosa, he said quietly. The people in those photos in your room. Rosa's expression softened. My parents in Mexico City. My younger brothers, one is a teacher, the other works in construction. My nieces and nephews. Her smile faded slightly. I send money home every month for my youngest brother's college tuition. You support your family, James realized. Another thing he'd never considered, that the salary he paid her, generous though it was, extended far beyond the woman who cooked his meals and pressed his shirts. Family takes care of family, Rosa said simply. Even from a distance. Is that why you never married? Had children of your own? The question was personal, too personal, perhaps, but James suddenly needed to know. Rosa's gaze dropped to her hands. Life doesn't always follow the path we expect, Mr. Barrett. I came to this country for opportunity, not for myself but for those I left behind. Some sacrifices were necessary. The weight of her words settled between them. While he had been building his empire, focused solely on his own success, Rosa had been quietly shaping her life around the needs of others, her family in Mexico, and more recently, his daughter. Tomorrow, James said, changing the subject. When Lily's mother arrives. I'd like you to be part of the meeting. Rosa looked alarmed. That wouldn't be appropriate. Ms. Andrews barely acknowledges my existence when she drops Lily off. Exactly why you should be there, James insisted. You know Lily better than either of us at this point. Your perspective matters. Rosa hesitated, then nodded slowly. If you think it would help Lily, I'll be there. Thank you. James turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Rosa? I've had my assistant start the paperwork for your permanent residency. It's long overdue. He left before she could respond, but not before seeing the shimmer of tears in her eyes, the first crack in her carefully maintained professional composure. Something was shifting between them, boundaries blurring as they navigated this unexpected territory together. Later that night, his phone pinged with a notification. Someone had tagged Barrett Technologies in a viral post, security footage of him running out of his board meeting, followed by speculation about what family emergency could make a notorious workaholic drop everything. James stared at the comments multiplying beneath the post. Watching from Melbourne, even billionaires have real problems. NYC mom here, something about this story feels important. Updates? Betting it's about his daughter. Barrett's ex married that toxic finance bro, right? With a sigh, James closed the app. Tomorrow would bring enough challenges without adding social media speculation to the mix. He had a custody negotiation to prepare for, a daughter to reassure, and a household reconfiguring itself around new priorities. For tonight, at least, his home was quiet. His daughter was safe. And for the first time in years, James Barrett fell asleep thinking not about market projections or quarterly reports, but about the two women under his roof who had, in different ways, shown him what truly mattered. When Tech CEO James Barrett returns unexpectedly from a cancelled conference, his normally deferential housekeeper Rosa stops him at the door with a finger to her lips. Please, sir. Quiet. The role reversal shocks him. Employees don't give him orders. But something in her eyes makes him listen. The mediation was scheduled for 10 a.m. in James's home office, neutral ground that wasn't quite neutral at all. His lawyer had advised against this location. Your ex-wife will feel at a disadvantage in your territory. but James had insisted. He wanted Lily to feel secure, and that meant keeping her in the environment where she'd finally begun to relax. At 9:45, Rosa was arranging a tray of coffee, water, and light refreshments when the security system announced a car at the gate. "They're early," James muttered, straightening his tie. He'd chosen to dress casually but respectably, dark jeans and a button-down rather than his usual suit. This wasn't a business negotiation, he'd reminded himself, though his instincts kept trying to treat it like one. Lily, who had been sitting silently at the kitchen island, immediately tensed. "I don't want to see them." "You don't have to," James assured her. "Remember our plan? You'll be with Dr. Martinez in the garden room until the mediator wants to speak with you. Rosa will stay with you the whole time." Rosa placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "We'll draw or read, whatever you prefer. And if you need anything at all, you just have to say the word." Lily nodded, but her expression remained tight with anxiety. "What if they make me go back?" Before James could answer, Rosa knelt to meet Lily at eye level. "Your father won't let that happen," she said with quiet certainty. "And neither will I." The simple promise seemed to steady Lily in a way James's more elaborate reassurances hadn't. She took a deep breath and squared her small shoulders. "Okay. I'm ready." As they moved toward the garden room, James touched Rosa's arm lightly. "Thank you," he murmured. Rosa met his gaze with surprising intensity. "Just remember what we discussed, Mr. Barrett. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about Lily's well-being." James nodded, struck again by how thoroughly Rosa had stepped beyond her role as housekeeper. In the past 3 days, she had become his co-parent, his confidant, his moral compass. The transformation should have felt jarring. Instead, it seemed like the most natural progression in the world. The doorbell rang, cutting short any further reflection. James squared his shoulders and went to meet his ex-wife. Catherine Andrews Atwood stood on his doorstep looking exactly as he remembered, elegantly dressed, perfectly groomed, and radiating controlled fury. Beside her stood Richard Atwood, her husband of 4 years, a financial advisor with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. "Where is she?" Catherine demanded, brushing past James without greeting. "Hello to you too, Catherine," James replied evenly. "Lily is safe. She's with the child psychologist the mediator recommended." "This is kidnapping," Richard interjected, his voice carrying the same condescending tone James remembered from their few previous interactions. "A 12-year-old crossing state lines without parental permission? We could press charges." James felt his composure slipping but forced himself to remain calm. "Against whom? The child who fled because she felt unsafe in your home? Or perhaps against yourself, for creating that environment?" Catherine's eyes flashed. "How dare you imply—" "I'm not implying anything," James interrupted. "I'm repeating what our daughter told me. And the mediator. And the child psychologist. And the family court representative who took her statement yesterday." That silenced both of them momentarily. Good. Let them wonder just how much official documentation already existed. "The mediator is waiting in my office," James continued smoothly, "along with my attorney and the court-appointed child advocate. Shall we?" As they walked through the house, James noticed Catherine taking in the subtle changes that had occurred in just 3 days. Lily's backpack hanging by the door, a math workbook open on the coffee table, a pair of girls' sneakers kicked off near the sofa. Signs of life, of permanence, of home. In the office, introductions were made with brittle politeness. The mediator, a seasoned family court professional named Dr. Harris, established ground rules while the attorneys arranged documents. The child advocate, Ms. Winters, sat slightly apart, her expression neutral but watchful. "Before we begin," Dr. Harris said, "I'd like to clarify our purpose here today. This is not a formal custody hearing. No binding decisions will be made. Our goal is to establish a temporary arrangement that prioritizes Lily's emotional well-being while more permanent legal processes move forward. Is that clear to everyone?" Reluctant nods all around. "Good. Now, Ms. Andrews Atwood, Mr. Atwood, I understand you were unaware of Lily's unhappiness in your home. Would you like to address that? Catherine leaned forward, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Lily has always been sensitive. The transition after our divorce was difficult, but she's been adjusting well. This runaway episode is completely out of character. Is it? James couldn't help interjecting. Or is it the natural result of a child who felt unheard for too long? Richard's jaw tightened. Convenient how she ran to the parent with unlimited resources and minimal oversight. Children her age are master manipulators when it comes to playing divorced parents against each other. The child advocate's pen paused over her notepad. Mr. Atwood, that's a concerning generalization about your stepdaughter. Would you say that's how you typically view Lily? As manipulative? Richard's expression flickered with the realization that he'd made a tactical error. I simply meant that children don't always understand the complexities of adult relationships. And what would you say is complex about telling a child she's in the way? James asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Or suggesting boarding school as a solution to the Lily problem? Catherine's head snapped toward her husband. You said what? For the first time, Richard looked genuinely uncomfortable. That's taken out of context. We were discussing options for her education, that's all. Mr. Barrett, the mediator interjected. How did you become aware of these comments? Lily told me. And Rosa, my housekeeper, who was the first person Lily spoke to when she arrived. Catherine's eyes narrowed. Your housekeeper? What does she have to do with any of this? A knock at the door prevented James from answering. Ms. Winters, the child advocate, rose to answer it. She spoke briefly with someone outside, then turned back to the room. The child psychologist believes Lily is ready to speak with us, she announced. And she's asked if Rosa Mendez can be present for support. Catherine's objection was immediate. Absolutely not. This is a family matter. Staff have no place in these discussions. Actually, Ms. Winters replied calmly, the psychologist believes Lily will be more forthcoming with Ms. Mendez present. And as our priority is getting an accurate understanding of Lily's experiences, I'm inclined to honor that request. Before Catherine could protest further, the door opened and Lily entered, followed by a gentle-faced woman who introduced herself as Dr. Martinez. Behind them came Rosa, her expression carefully neutral but her posture protective as she stood slightly behind Lily's chair. What followed was, for James, one of the most difficult hours of his life. With quiet dignity beyond her years, Lily described the slow erosion of her sense of belonging in her mother's home. The whispered arguments she overheard. The subtle ways Richard made her feel unwelcome. The increasing emotional distance from her mother, who seemed determined to prioritize her new marriage over her daughter's discomfort. And when did you decide to come here? Dr. Harris asked gently. Lily glanced at Rosa before answering. After I heard them talking about boarding schools. I texted Rosa to ask if she thought Dad would let me live here instead. All eyes turned to Rosa, who straightened imperceptibly under the scrutiny. You've been communicating with my daughter behind my back? Catherine demanded. With respect, ma'am, Rosa replied, her voice quiet but firm. Lily reached out to me because she needed someone to listen. I never encouraged her to leave home. In fact, I suggested she talk to you directly about her concerns. And did you? James asked Lily gently. Try to talk to your mom? Lily nodded, tears filling her eyes. She said I was being dramatic. That I should try harder with Richard because he was part of our family now. Catherine flinched visibly. That's not. I didn't realize how unhappy you were. Or you didn't want to, James suggested, unable to keep the edge from his voice. The mediator held up a hand. This isn't productive. Ms. Mendez, how long have you been in communication with Lily? Rosa hesitated, glancing at James, who nodded encouragingly. Since her first extended stay after Mr. Barrett hired me. About 4 years now. And what has been the nature of these communications? Mostly everyday things. School projects. Books she's reading. Sometimes. Rosa paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes concerns about her home life, especially in the past year. And you didn't think to inform either parent about these concerns? Richard demanded. Rosa met his gaze directly. I encouraged Lily to speak with her parents. But I also respected her confidence. She needed someone who would simply listen without judgment, and that's what I provided. Catherine turned to James, her expression accusatory. Did you know about this relationship? Not until Lily arrived here 3 days ago, James admitted. I've been just as absent in her life as you accuse me of being, Catherine. The difference is, I'm ready to change that. For the next hour, the adults discussed options while Lily and Rosa returned to the garden room. The child advocate and psychologist strongly recommended that Lily remain with James temporarily, with structured visitation from Catherine. Family therapy was recommended for all parties, including Rosa, whose unexpected role in Lily's life couldn't be untangled from the larger family dynamic. When Catherine and Richard finally left, with a formal temporary agreement in place and a court date set for a more permanent custody arrangement, James found himself standing in his foyer feeling both drained and strangely liberated. He found Rosa and Lily in the kitchen, making what appeared to be cookie dough. How did it go? Rosa asked quietly, while Lily pretended to be absorbed in measuring flour. Better than expected, James replied. You'll be staying here, Lily, at least for the next 2 months. Then there will be another evaluation. Lily's relief was palpable. And Mom? She'll visit on weekends. And you'll have therapy together. James hesitated. She loves you, Lily. She just lost sight of what matters for a while. Like you did? Lily asked, her perception startling him. James nodded, acknowledging the truth in her observation. Yes. Like I did. Are we going to be okay? Lily asked, the question encompassing so much more than the custody arrangement. James looked from his daughter to Rosa, who had somehow become the foundation of their newly forming family unit. Yes, he said with certainty. We're going to be okay. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, James found Rosa in the garden, sitting quietly on a bench beneath the old oak tree. Without asking permission, he sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Thank you, he said simply. For everything you've done for Lily. For us. Rosa didn't look at him, her gaze fixed on the stars emerging in the twilight sky. I only did what anyone would do. No, James disagreed gently. Most people would have maintained professional boundaries, called the appropriate authorities, kept their distance from a situation that wasn't their responsibility. Lily is not a situation, Rosa said, a rare edge in her voice. She's a child who needed someone to listen. And you listened, James acknowledged. When neither of her parents did. When I was too busy building a company to notice my daughter was disappearing into herself. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes before Rosa spoke again. When I was Lily's age, my father left our family. Just disappeared one day. No explanation, no goodbye. My mother had to work 3 jobs to support us. Her voice grew distant with memory. There was a woman in our apartment building, Senora Vega, who would check on us after school, help with homework, make sure we had dinner. She had no obligation to us. We weren't her family. But she saw children who needed someone, and she stepped forward. She changed your life, James realized. Rosa nodded. She taught me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up when you need them most. James reached over and took her hand, a gesture so natural it surprised them both. You showed up for Lily when I didn't know how. And now you do, Rosa said simply. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of possibilities neither had considered before. James Barrett, who had spent his adult life maintaining careful control over every aspect of his world, found himself facing the most unpredictable path of all. One where his housekeeper had become something more, where his daughter was teaching him how to be a father, where home suddenly meant people rather than property. Where do we go from here? He asked, the question encompassing all the unspoken complications of their situation. Rosa turned to face him, her expression serious but unafraid. We do what's best for Lily. One day at a time. And what about what's best for you? James pressed gently. What do you want, Rosa? For the first time since he'd known her, Rosa seemed genuinely uncertain. I've spent most of my life taking care of others. My family in Mexico. This household. Now Lily. I'm not sure I remember how to want things for myself. Try, James encouraged. Just one thing. Something you want. Rosa was quiet for so long that James thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. To belong. Not as an employee. Not as someone who exists on the margins of other people's lives. Just to belong somewhere. To someone. The simple honesty of her answer caught at James's heart. How many people had he employed, invested in, negotiated with, without ever seeing them as complete human beings with needs that went beyond the transactional? You belong here, he said, surprised by the certainty in his voice. With us. If that's what you want. Rosa's eyes met his, searching for qualifications or conditions. Finding none, she allowed herself a small smile. One day at a time, she repeated, neither accepting nor rejecting the possibility he'd offered. But she didn't remove her hand from his. Inside the house, Lily stood at her bedroom window, watching the two people who had, in very different ways, created a safe harbor for her. For the first time in years, she felt the tentative stirrings of hope, not just for herself, but for all three of them. The household that had begun with a command for silence. Please, sir. Quiet. Was finding its voice at last.